Hi everyone, my name is Kim Grieve. I'm from the WA Cancer and Palliative Care Network. So I work with Yanni and Teresa in the same area. My background is nursing. I'm a registered nurse, firstly, and I have been working on a couple of projects at the Cancer Network. One of the projects I did a few years ago was the National Research Project, SEBRAC, where a lot of the resources that you're using now have come from. The other hat that I wear is I do advanced health directive training, so I've been involved in writing the e-learning package which is on our website and doing a lot of community and health professional training on advanced health directive. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about advanced care planning and also talking about advanced health directive and then also including palliative care case conferencing. So, like most presentations, what we first of all I want to cover is what we're going to cover during the session, so the learning outcomes. So you're very clear in advance what we're going to be talking about and what I hope you'll get out of the session. So basically this session will be defining what advanced care planning is and also the term living will. Now the term living will a lot of people get confused about. And we'll also be talking about advanced health directive and common law directive, and also making sure that you understand the difference. Because a lot of people get confused between advanced care planning, advanced health directive, common law directive. There's a lot of advances in these sort of terminology. And also we'll cover enduring power guardianship. And as I said, by the end of today, you'll be very clear about the difference between advanced care planning and the advanced health directive, and particularly this whole concept of living will, which we hear bantered about quite a lot. And then we'll cover palliative care case conferencing towards the end. Okay, so the thing that I think is quite important about advanced care planning is really it's an opportunity to reflect in advance, basically, where you would like to die in the setting of your choice. Now, it's not just about your residents, I feel. This is an opportunity for each of us to think about it, because the reality is we're all only here for a finite period of time. And so the content of today, I think we can actually also reflect upon our own selves, because at the end of the day, it's quite useful while we're well to think about what is important to us down the track when we become unwell. So I think it's important it's important because we're here today because of the resident, but it's also very applicable for each and every person that's here today. Firstly, what is advanced care planning? So advanced care planning really is documenting your wishes. So at a time when you are well, like we are now, or in the case of the resident, they may have a life-limiting illness, but at the time, documenting their wishes while they are well, so looking ahead for when they become unwell. So you can actually plan things ahead, before the wheels fall off the bus, and you actually got a plan in place that everyone's all clear about. And it's basically, it's not just talking about the resident, but it's the bigger picture. It's the team, it's the family, and it's the patient. So it's actually, it covers the bigger picture. Okay, so advanced care planning basically is a process of how we look ahead and plan, for the future. But we can use some certain tools or documents. So we can use the term living will, which I will, as I said, I'll explain that very clearly down the track. We also may use the tool Advanced Health Directive. Now, Advanced Health Directive has been around now for almost 3 years. Legislation came in 2010. They could also use a common law directive, which I'll also explain down the track. Advanced care plan or enduring power guardianship. So they're all the various tools that we have available to utilise as part of the process for advanced care planning. So there are some key elements that we need to consider in preparation for advanced care planning. So it's clear communication of the prognosis. So it's about, if you've got a resident who has a life-limiting illness, it's actually being very clear about what that prognosis is. They will probably want to be very clear about what's happening, for them and what to expect in the future. So it's looking at that side of things. Also the psychological and spiritual preparation for death. Now, some people actually may be in a position where they accept the fact that they have a life-limiting illness and death will be, coming shortly, and other people will be at different stages where they'll be more resilient or, find it hard to accept. So everyone will be in a different stage, and we're all individual. The way we view death and the way we feel about death is very different. And it's also covering things like appropriate use of life-sustaining treatment. And the main thing that everyone thinks about when they think about that is CPR. But basically it's any treatment that can actually, life-sustaining treatment is anything that sustains your life. So it could be nasogastric feeding, it could be a peg tube, it can be antibiotics, a pacemaker, feeding someone, anything that keeps people going. Also bearing in mind that medical practitioners are not obliged to give treatment which is not clinically appropriate, but it's also important to discuss those issues with the resident and family about what's important to them and what life-sustaining treatment means for that individual, because as we know, once again, we're all quite different. And it's basically having the right information available for the resident and family. And it's also making sure you know the resident well. And I think I've sort of used this story before, but there's nothing worse than, you know, turning up and having a discussion with a resident and you don't have the right notes. Now, an example I give is a friend of mine went to an 8-patient clinic to have his medication, and the registrar wrote out a whole pile of medication, and it wasn't for him. So he sort of said, "Ooh," and then sort of, you know, then they realised. So there's little things like that. It's not just about what can happen clinically. It's about how you look and the confidence they have in the process. If you're not confident and sure about the person that you're talking about, so it's making sure that you are prepared and have that sort of information corrected in advance. So the Advanced Health Directive and Enduring Power and Guardianship, as a result of legislation which came into place almost 3 years ago, it was actually in February 2010. And that, as a result, enables us now to have the Advanced Health Directive and the Enduring Power of Guardianship. And as I said, we will go into that in more detail down the track. Now, the legislation came about by changing or amendments to 3 key pieces of legislation. Firstly, the Guardianship and Administration Act 1990, and that basically was now incorporating the terminology Advanced Health Directive and Enduring Power of Guardianship. So that was the amendment of that, introducing that into the legislation. Then was the amending of the criminal code, and that for us as health professionals, that is really important. In the past, if you didn't provide treatment or offer treatment to a particular individual and that as a result they died, we could actually have been criminally prosecuted. Now, under the legislation, if you follow someone's Advanced Health Directive and you follow in good care and you actually follow what they've got, and as a result they may die. So for example, they didn't want CPR or they didn't want feeding or they didn't want antibiotics, and as a result they died, we are actually covered under the law and protected. So that enables us to follow someone's Advanced Health Directive. So for us, that change legislation is paramount. Finally, it's the amendment to the Civil Liability Act, and that basically introduced the definition of what is a health professional. So they're the key changes in relation to the legislation. Now, under common law, you can complete, which is judge law, what we call a living will or a common law directive. Now, what I mean by common law directive or a living will is basically where an individual can write down the types of wishes they would like or treatment they'd like or not like in advance for a time when they've lost capacity, and they can write that down and then have it signed and witnessed. And they can be in any format. There's no legislation which defines how that looks. It doesn't have a particular form, it doesn't have a particular format. However, legally, the Acts Amendment Consent to Medical Treatment Act, which, as I said, come out recently, means that we must follow that and actually supports that still. The Advanced Health Directive is another type of a living will, but it comes under statutory law and it has specific regulations that we must follow. And the form that we have, which you've got in the guide in front of you there, actually has a specific format, it has specific witnessing requirements, and basically comes under statutory law and we must follow it. So you can see you've got the living will, or which we call the common law directive, which comes under judge law. And for us as health professionals, that can be confusing because it doesn't have a set format. So people could present various types of documents, and to us as health professionals that could be confusing, but yet we have to respect that because it's a legal requirement. The Advanced Health Directive for us is much clearer because it's in a set format, it's very clear, it's got the Advanced Health Directive word on it, and it has very set witnessing requirements. Now the difference between the two, quite often I get telephone calls and they'll say, well, you know, I've done a document, I use the Queensland format, or I've done my own format, is that valid? The answer to that is yes. But the important thing, as I say to them, to bear in mind, a common law document is fine, but if it's not clear or health professionals when using it question the validity because of the format, it actually needs to be validated. So firstly, the State Administrative Tribunal to a certain limit can review it and uphold it or withdraw it. But if they're not happy and they can't do it, it will get caught up in the court system. As you know, that could take some time. Whereas Advanced Health Directive can be totally reviewed and any problems resolved quickly by the State Administrative Tribunal. So that's what I say is the advantage of using the Advanced Health Directive. At the end of the day, they've got a choice, their prerogative, which one they use. The only thing about the Advanced Health Directive is it's only valid in Western Australia as a statutory document. As soon as you leave Western Australia, it falls out of that category, but it can still be considered a common law document if you move into other states. So basically, if you're going to leave state, or say you want to move your elderly grandmother out, you know, from another state to Australia, as long as they've got capacity, I recommend that people complete the Advanced Health Directive because it actually has a lot of advantages. But once again, as health professionals, you must be aware of the difference and the fact that we must legally, you know, respect both. And we'll go into what happens if there's conflict about the validity of those down the track, and might answer some of the questions. So, an Advanced Health Directive, basically, as I've said, is a specific type of document, but basically, and it's as it's been supported, but basically enables us to write down the things in advance about the types of treatment or wishes that we'd like or not like. So it's basically, you're writing down any treatment decisions, that is any particular medical treatment that you might say yes to or no to, that you'd like in advance. However, in saying that, you must be 18 years or older and have capacity. Now the law states that as soon as you turn 18, you have got capacity, and that is only otherwise unless challenged. So, for example, if you believe someone doesn't have capacity, then that can be challenged and that can be resolved by the State Administrative Tribunal. But legally, everyone's considered to have capacity as soon as they turn 18. So the Advanced Health Directive, as long as they are 18, have completed the document, had appropriately witnessed, we must follow that document. It's a legal document, and if we don't follow an Advanced Health Directive, we're breaking the law. And there are only certain exceptions that in which the Advanced Health Directive may not be upheld, but we'll follow that down the track as well. But it's really important to remember that Advanced Health Directive is a legal document and we must legally follow it. The other document which now comes under legislation is Enduring Power of Guardianship. Now the Enduring Power of Guardianship comes under the Office of the Public Advocate. The Department of Health manages the Advanced Health Directive and the Office of the Public Advocate manages the Enduring Power of Guardianship. So it doesn't come under our remit, but we're still important that we talk about it. Now the Enduring Power of Guardianship, in other words, is the ability for us to nominate a legally appointed substitute decision maker. So the Advanced Health Directive is just about health. That's us writing down what we would like as our consent in advance, so echoing through time, if you like, while we have capacity to come into operation when we've lost capacity. Okay, so it's just medical treatment. The Enduring Power of Guardianship is where you nominate someone else who you trust and have a rapport with, and you're giving them the power to act on your behalf to make decisions about health and lifestyle decisions when you have lost capacity. Okay, so once again, Enduring Power Guardianship can only be completed while you have capacity and comes into force when you've lost capacity. So the thing about Enduring Power and Guardianship is that you can nominate one person to say health and lifestyle decisions. Say you've got a couple of children, one might be a doctor or a nurse or physio or something, so you say, okay, I'll get Jane to cover my health issues because she understands that. I've got a son, Bob, and he is a lawyer, for example, you might be lucky, and I'll get him to manage the lifestyle issues. And lifestyle can be things like what aged care facility they go to, who can come and see them. It's all those sorts of issues. But also in the document, you if you see a enduring power of guardianship in front of you, it's not just, okay, assuming that person has full responsibility for everything. You have to look closely inside the book, peel back the orange and look a bit more deeper inside the core, because people then, specifically may nominate one person to have the power for health, some person have the power for lifestyle. So you have to make sure you're approaching the correct person, because you don't want to get confused and have one person making a decision about health when they don't have that power. And you can also write down specific things that you're concerned about. For example, okay, ethnically, technically speaking, I'm Jewish, but I'm so far removed from that as possible. But if I was fully Jewish, I could put on it, okay, I get Bob to give decisions about where I live, but I'd really like to, if I could, be in a particular Jewish nursing home down the road where all my friends are, because I want to be near them, And then Bob will think, okay, I've got that direction, and if it's possible, I'll follow that. Now, you can also see what a big responsibility it is to actually be a substitute decision maker, because firstly, the person making the document is trusting you to make those decisions, but you got a big responsibility, because you're also considering what it is that they would like or not like, and then and how to deal with that situation when the time comes. So it's about thinking about ahead who you want to be a substitute decision maker, and also if you're being appointed, thinking about, okay, firstly, do I want that responsibility, and am I capable of following it before just lightly accepting it. Now, the enduring power of guardianship is also very different to the enduring power of attorney, which I'm sure you've come across. Enduring power of attorney, which is also dealt through the Office of the Public Advocate, deals with money or financial decisions only. So that is, okay, I want someone to access my bank account, pay my fees, get me some money, pay my bills, while I've either got capacity. Also, whereas enduring power of guardianship is just health and lifestyle issues. And quite a lot of confusion happens. They'll go, well, I've got the enduring power of attorney, I'm going to make Flo a decision about health. And even some health professionals would assume that that person is the key person to contact, but in fact that's not true, because they only have the responsibility to manage financial decisions. And the Office of the Public Advocate have a fabulous website that you can also go to if you want more information about enduring power of guardianship and enduring power of attorney. They're a wonderful team. Just in the room here, if you just want to raise your hands, tell me who here has an advanced health directive? So 2 of us. Okay. So this section, what happens if there's no advanced health directive, is very important for all of you, because, except for Teresa and I, because we've got our advanced health directive. So basically, what happens then if you don't have an advanced health directive? Okay, so now, right now, while I have capacity, if you want to give me antibiotics, or you want to feed me, or put a pacemaker in or something like that, you would ask me, and I would give consent or refuse consent, and I'll say yes or no, I'm happy with that. Okay, so each of your residents, while they have capacity, each time you want to provide a medical treatment, you have to ask them and obtain consent from them. There's no point going to their husband or the wife or their children. While they have capacity, you ask them. Obviously, sometimes it gets confusing if their capacity sometimes fluctuates. As we know, with some people, there's often a term my mum uses, she goes, they're having a bit of a bad day, So some days, their capacity may not be as crash hot, or they may be able to make some decisions and not others. So if their capacity is fluctuating, then you'll need to assess at that time. And if they don't have capacity, then if they've basically would follow this treatment hierarchy, which we'll be going to in a minute. But it's, and if you have concerns about capacity, then you may want a medical practitioner or someone who has been nominated in your facility to assess that capacity. So basically, while they have capacity, they're the ones that would give consent. If they don't have consent, then someone has to provide consent on their behalf. So we need to be very clear about who we approach to obtain consent from. Okay? So we basically, the law now says, we look at this, we refer to the hierarchy for treatment decisions, and this is non-urgent decisions. And urgent is a different situation, which we'll cover in a little while. So basically, the top of the list of the hierarchy is advanced health directive. So in this case, Teresa and I, we've got our advanced health directive, so we've covered, so we've written down certain treatments that we'd like or not like, and that's fine, as long as we've got it with us. If they don't have it with us, or we haven't shared it, then it's almost useless. But also remembering the advanced health directive is only useful if it covers the situation that you've written in your document. So if you've only just written your document that I don't want CPR if I have if I become a quadriplegic, for example, well, if the situation is, oh, okay, we want to ventilate them or put a peg in, it doesn't cover that situation, does it? So then you actually have to come back to here. The next level down is the enduring guardian with authority. Remembering, as I said, the enduring power guardianship, you may nominate people with different levels of authority depending on what you want. So that's the other thing to be very clear about, what they have authority for. So in that case, so once again, the next level is, as I said, enduring guardians. That's where you've nominated your legally appointed substitute decision maker. Now, if you don't have that, then you can cascade down to the guardian, which has been appointed by the State Administrative Tribunal. And the guardian, as we know, is when someone has been appointed to make those decisions and provide consent or refuse consent because they don't have anyone else or no one else is appropriate to make those decisions. So if they didn't have one of those, then you can go to the spouse or de facto, and also remembering that same-sex relationships is covered under the de facto category. So, okay, so you can go to spouse or de facto, but if they're not contactable or readily available, then you need to cascade down. For example, my partner may have gone off to Europe, gone on a holiday, and be in transit, for example, between here and London, and you need a decision. Well, that person is not going to be contactable, and he's not going to be available to make that decision. So therefore, you need to cascade down to the next person, adult son or daughter. Well, in my case, I've got no children, so that's no benefit to you. Could be, parent. Well, my mum might have gone off, to Vanuatu or somewhere, and she could be having a ball and kicking her heels up with the old other ladies in the local area. And so she's not really interested because she's got a mobile phone switched off because she's having her margaritas and having a good time. And then be sibling. Well, my brother might have gone somewhere else, so he might not be contactable. So then you can cascade down to a sibling. In the past, we were unable to cascade down that list. Okay, so if you didn't have a guardian or a spouse or de facto, you couldn't just go down to the next level. It'd be blocked, and then you have to make an application to the State Administrative Tribunal. Now we're a lot more flexible. We can cascade down the list to find someone to provide consent. The important thing about this is we as health professionals must find the right person to obtain consent. The law is that we must find the right person for consent. So if they don't have advanced health directive or appointed a legal substitute decision maker, in that case, then each time a decision needs to be made, we then need to refer back to hierarchy. We can't just always go back to the adult son or daughter, for example, just because they're handy and they live down the road. We actually really need to go back to the list because you can see how that list could actually fluctuate. As I've said before, your spouse or de facto can be away. They may have an adult son or daughter, but they could be away on business. So it's important to refer to this list each time. Now, I've said before about the urgent situation, so that covers non-urgent. Health professionals are covered to provide urgent care if they, even if it goes against someone's advanced health directive, if they don't have the advanced health directive in front of them. If they have the document in front of them, then they must follow it. But basically, if they don't have the advanced health directive or not aware of where it is, and say I'm crossing the road and I get hit by a bus on Outram Street, then I'm going to end up at Royal Perth, and then while I'm critically unwell, they've got a responsibility to stabilise me and get me stable and comfortable, and then track down who I am, who my family are, and whether I've got an advanced health directive. The key thing though is, say in that meantime they have connected me up to dialysis. They've put in, they've intubated me, put in a pacemaker in, because I'm not getting any younger, and and they commence all that treatment, and it's inconsistent with my advanced health directive. And then my partner brings in my advanced health directive. Then, if there's any treatment that they've started which is against what I've written down, they must withdraw that treatment. Okay, so it's not at all a loss, but the reality is there will be some urgent situations in which they won't have the Advanced Health Directive available with you, because we're not always going to carry it with us everywhere we go. And Murphy's Law is it'll always happen when you're not expecting it, you know. But the reality is that there may be some situations where they do have the document. And an example might be you've got a resident who's been transferred to the emergency department and they're lying there and they've got all the documents. You've been a perfect, you know, facility, and you've got all the documentation there, and you've got the Advanced Health Directive, and the staff have read it and they all know what it is, and suddenly they arrest. Well, if they have got the documentation in front of them and they're aware of it, then and it says no CPR, then they would actually be breaking the law by commencing that. So that's a situation where they may have it in front of them. But if they didn't have it in front of them, or it was there and they couldn't find it because, you know, it's right at the bottom of the notes and they arrest, then they're covered under the urgent clause. But they then have to follow it through afterwards. Okay, so sometimes there could actually be conflict around Advanced Health Directives. And I've here considered I think there's two main categories of conflict. The first one is as health professionals, you know, ourselves, we may have conflict around the documentation that we see. One of the biggest ones I see would be whether we have concerns about the validity of the document. So, you know, for example, they may have written something which is ambiguous, it's unclear, unrealistic. You know, for example, they may have said, look, if I become unwell and I get ventilated, I'd like to be ventilated with nitrogen. Well, that would be inconsistent since room air is 21% oxygen, so basically they're signing their death warrant straight away. And we as health professionals would be, you know, that would be wrong for us to follow that direction. Or another example might be that we've got enduring guardianship and we're concerned that the person they've nominated is not acting in their best interest, and we have concerns about that person. So straight away there probably come a couple of the conflicts. So if you've got those documents in front of them, we can't just ignore it. You can't just sort of put it down and say, oh, I'm just going to forget about it because I don't like what I see. The correct process is to go to the State Administrative Tribunal, lodge your concern. They will then review that document and either uphold it or withdraw it. And that's really the only time that Advanced Health Directive can be invalid, okay? And the State Administrative Tribunal can, if necessary, resolve things in a matter of hours if it's urgent. And if it's not urgent, it can take a little bit longer. But we are talking about a non-urgent scenario here rather than the urgent scenario. Prior to advanced care planning, these are just some things to think about to get in place in preparation for having the discussion with the resident and family. So what sort of things are required and things that you might want to think about? Who should be present? Now, if they have capacity, they may have specific people they want, you know, to be there. They may want their partner to be there, or they may want to wait until their grandson who's coming over from Canada to come and join them, for example, and they want their grandson to be there all the time. Or they actually may, for example, want a spiritual or religious advisor or leader to become there as part of the conversation. So it's important to check out what's important to them, because remembering what's important to them, it could be different to what's important to us. Okay? And it's also very different if they didn't have capacity, because if they had advanced dementia, you won't be going down that process. You'd be more having conversations with the family or the legally appointed substitute decision maker about who should be there. And also being very, as I said, being very clear about who actually has the decision-making capacity. So, for example, if they didn't have capacity, you know, making sure you've actually, you know, choosing someone who has the ability or power to make, you know, to be the decision maker. So if it was, as I said, if they did have a enduring guardianship, for example, then you've got the key person there. Otherwise, if they didn't have any document, then it could be anyone in the family, depending on the hierarchy who's contactable and readily available. So you actually may want to have those key people all together if possible. So in terms of when to have and how to have the conversations with people about advanced care planning, the literature basically has shown that there's quite a divergence between health professionals and the resident as to when and how advanced care planning should start. A lot of health professionals believe that it's up to the resident to initiate a conversation and say to them, look, I want to talk about what's happening for me in the future, whereas basically a lot of the residents feel that it's up to the doctor for example, or the nurse to bring up that conversation. We basically believe there's actually lots of opportunities to have that conversation, and we've got different ideas of how to commence that and when the right time is to initiate the conversation. So this table could look a little bit confusing, but I'd like to focus really on the 3 items on the left. Okay, the first time is basically where the time could be where the patient or the resident has started to question or make hints about that things are not going too well. Like you're showering someone and they go, "Oh, look, I'm really tired," the fact that I'm getting short of breath and I've sort of had enough, and I really just want this to end. Or I'm really concerned because I'm getting breathless now. What's next? What's going to happen to me next? That my pain's increasing. What happens? Can you manage that down the track? Or, I'm really feeling quite anxious. How can you manage that for me? So they're starting to have a thought process about, what could happen to them. Or the family could be saying that as well. I'm really worried because my mother now is not eating very well. She needs more assistance to get to the shower. She's not doing things herself. What's in store for us? What might happen? So they're already starting to trigger or hint to you that they are ready. They've also already got a process in place, and the brain's ticking over. There also could be the surprise question. Would you be surprised if one of your residents would die within the next 12 months? And if the answer is you wouldn't be surprised, no, then you actually may be thinking, okay, well, maybe the time is now to start thinking about what the future may be and start having a plan in place. So we have a sort of calm transition from where they are now to where they're going to be, rather than getting to the end and the wheels fall off the bus and it's all mayhem and everyone's, getting rather distraught. And also, nurses and health carers are actually probably in a good position to have an idea of that, probably even more so than a lot of GPs, because they're around the patients day in and day out. It's also on a clinical front, there's actually specific clinical prognostic indicators that we can use that can tell us whether someone's starting to deteriorate and whether or not it's the right time to start thinking about having those discussions. There's actually specific clinical indicators which can tell us that they are deteriorating, okay, and so the time that they're probably going to be around is already looking limited. So, but right now they're probably quite stable, so it could be a good time for us to think about having those conversations now and planning ahead. Now, it's no easy way to have the conversation with people to trigger just commence a conversation about advanced care planning. Research has shown that a lot of carers and nurses actually almost become like their family because they've become very close and you know them very well, and then they have a strong bond with you. So if you've got a resident like that and they've started to initiate conversations, or you see that they're failing, it probably is easy to have the conversation because you got to know them quite well. So you can, start talking about that and say, well, how are you doing? What do you see things could be down the track? How can we help you? And sort of have those conversations and sort of say, look, it might be useful if we have a meeting and sit down with the team. You can, baby steps. You don't want to walk up to someone straight away and they've been like one day in the home and go, by the way, you're dying, and I actually think we need to talk about your death and where you're going to die. You'd be thinking, oh my goodness. I'm dying, I didn't know that. It's like, so you want to be a little bit more gentle, and and also it might need, the fact they might have only just got a diagnosis of, say, liver cancer or something like that. You don't want to go up and say, oh God, you've got cancer, and I think, oh, did I? I didn't even know that. Like I thought I was, So you want to you might need to take it in stages. The first time, break the news to them and see if they've got an understanding of their prognosis, and then do it in different stages. The other thing, advanced care planning, I believe, is not just about medical treatment. That's only one part of me. The rest of who I am is outside that. It's about my goals, beliefs, possessions, etc. So, for example, some people may have specific beliefs. And we're all different, so we're going to have a lot of different variation within this room, for example. And for example, and so specific beliefs often come down from years of experience and what we've exposed to, and it changes in time over experience. So as we get older, the reality is we accumulate more health issues, and so our belief system or what's important to us changes as we get older, depending on where we are, how old we are, what we've experienced and what we've experienced around us. You know, the belief system of an 18-year-old is very different to a 50-year-old. 18-year-old, I want to party and I'm not going to think about what happened to me, death is not important. 50-year-old, I'm thinking about planning for retirement, how long have I got to live, can I be well, you know, those sorts of things. It's quite different. Possessions, you know, some possessions are very important, some people are materialistic. For me, as long as I've got my iPhone and my iPad, I'm quite happy. You know, and I mean, when I'm 80 and whatever's moving on in technology, I'll be there, I can assure you. As long as I can, you know, I've got capacity, I'll be right up there playing with those things. I'm quite happy. And you know, if I've got my iPad and a cup of coffee and I've got my iPhone sitting next to me, I'm quite happy. So what's important for some people is to be able to enjoy those things. You know, as soon as they can't do, you know, Sudoku because their eyes are going and or they become breathless, so they can no longer do their crocheting, or their Parkinson's got worse and they can't put things together. It can be quite devastating for some people, especially with, you know, they want to knit booties for their great-great-grandchild, or, you know, like my mum knits things for HIV babies in Africa and things like that. So she quite likes doing that, you know, and she's often sort of doing those sorts of things. So, you know, being able to do those things for other people, if she can't do that, that would actually could be quite devastating. Relationships, you know, that's also very important to people. The fact that they have visitors, who comes to see them, and, you know, as we know, we talked about before, some people may not have anyone. So you probably are the relationship for a lot of those residents. So you interacting with them is very special and gives them meaning, because they then will probably, some of them will probably live vicariously through you. You know, the fact that, oh, you know, your daughter just got married, and that's lovely, you know, you've got a grandchild, that's fabulous, you know, because I don't have that. You know, all that, you know, so that's actually can be quite important. The other thing I think is really important is religious, spiritual and cultural needs. Even in this room, we've got quite diverse people. Now, basically, each of us are very different, and we actually have all what is important to one person is different to someone else. Now, the other I mentioned before, because technically speaking, I'm Jewish, but I'm not. Okay, so but you might think that I am, and suddenly want to do all those rites and rituals, whatever they are. I've got no idea, and you know, and then I'll be thinking, well, no, you know, I don't want that because that's not me. Okay. I'm me, that's not me, okay? So it's never assumed, just because you're a Muslim or a Hindu or a Catholic, that the rites and practices that go along with that is what they want, because they may not actually be practicing. Just because they may come from their ethnic group, we cannot assume that that's important to them. We also cannot know every religious and spiritual culture, belief, practice in this world, okay? We can't, and we can't know it all, but we can ask them, you know, how does that work for you? What do you want to do when you become unwell? Are there particular, you know, music you want, or, you know, any particular people you want to be there, any particular colours that you like? What's important to you as an individual? And we can then try and see if we can achieve that. The next stage is, okay, we're thinking ahead now, so we've started, you know, having a few conversations about we'd like to, you know, have a chat, and we want to plan ahead. So, for example, we may say, okay, have you thought about the types of decisions in the future? What is available? Oops, what's available? You've got Advanced Health Directive or Enduring Power of Guardianship. So, for example, you know, explain to them what the difference is. So this is assuming they've got capacity. And bearing in mind, as soon as your resident doesn't have capacity, Advanced Health Directive and Enduring Power of Guardianship is out the window, and no one else can write it on their behalf. These are only, as I said before, valid while you've got capacity to write and to complete, and they come into operation when you've lost capacity. Okay. So, for example, it may be appropriate for them to complete an Advanced Health Directive and an Enduring Power of Guardianship. It may be appropriate for them to complete one of them or none of them. Example of that be, for example, Advanced Health Directive is very useful if you've got very strongly a belief system about certain treatments you'd like or not like, and you want to take the responsibility away from your family, and you also want to be sure that it will happen. Advanced Health Directive is very powerful. You actually may not have specific treatments that you really feel strongly about, but you really want to have a particular person to make those decisions, and that can be more fluid and fluid and sort of approach the situation as arises. So you trust someone to make your decisions on your behalf, and they can actually meet their situations as they arise. So it's a bit more of a fluid process. Or you may not want either, and a situation of neither might be, you might have a perfect family, so you've got a loving partner, you've got fabulous kids, and you've got fabulous friends around you, and you feel totally comfortable that each of your people in your family know it is what you'd like or not like, and they will make those decisions on your behalf. So, for example, you know that your husband will make those decisions, or your children knows what you want. Then under that hierarchy, you can automatically see that we can go through those individuals and approach them for consent. So advanced care planning discussions can encompass quite a few things, beliefs and attitudes towards death and dying. As I said before, we may not want to break the news straight away with them and horrify them. It might need to be done in several, little baby steps. Initiate the first discussion first of all, raise it with them, and actually might take several stages to actually get a resolution. Okay, and as I've said, people have different beliefs and attitudes about dying. Dying these days is almost seen in our society as a failure. In the old days, when people probably only lived to about 40, everyone was used to people dying. You would have a wake and the body would be in the, downstairs, and everyone would pop over, and there'd be a bit more of a celebration. And we were used to we had lots of specific cultural rituals that went with death. These days, surprisingly, you could actually probably almost get to your 40s or 50s in some cases and never have come across someone that's died. If you think of someone who hasn't worked in the health industry, have never experienced death, because people are living much longer, and it could be, you could be actually, quite mature before you've come across someone who's died. And it's not surprising now to see people living in their 100s and 90s. The 50s are the new 40s, thank goodness. That's what I keep telling myself anyway. And okay, so another thing about that is now it's almost seen as a failure to die. It's not like, oh, okay, they've died. It's like, oh, we've lost them, or they lost the battle. It's almost like we've moved on a little bit. So it's also sometimes it's about correcting some of those attitudes, but also listening to what their attitudes and their belief system is and working with them. What active sort of treatments do they want? What's their resuscitation wishes? What point in time do they want to be resuscitated? Would they like, for example, under active versus might be, okay, I'm happy to have chemo for a certain period of time, and I'll trial it, and if it fails, then we'll stop. Or I'm happy to have the chemo or antibiotics if it keeps me comfortable, but not to prolong my life, because I know I've got a life-limiting illness. And particularly with a lot of dementia patients, it can actually, research has shown they become quite agitated and distressed when they move away from their familiar surroundings. And that can be all of us, isn't it? When we get taken out of our own little shell in our world and suddenly thrown in somewhere else, it's quite stressful, particularly when you're not feeling well. Funeral wishes. That's an important thing to think about, because a number of times where, family members haven't even told you what they want. Do I want to be cremated? Do I want to be buried? There could be different levels of discussions, okay? So, for example, you may want to have organise a meeting with family and the resident and facility staff, so it might be the first stage. Have a chat with the family, get them in and talk about how we're going, what we can do, and what we can plan, and how we can set a plan in place, and find out what everyone's expectations are. The next level could be the family, resident and their GP. So they've got a GP that they trust, or the person that's been coming to that facility they've got a rapport with, or they're concerned about clinical issues. They're not necessarily suffering right now, but they might want to talk about a lot more clinical things about how you're going to manage my anxiety. How are you going to manage my respiratory secretions when I'm sort of, I've got a lot of those and I'm feeling breathless? Or the resident may want a different thing to what the family is. The family want to be really gung-ho and proactive and they want everything. And the person's saying, no, look, this is my life. The realisation is that I'm going to die soon. I just want to be comfortable. I want to spend time with you. I don't want you to be jumping on my chest or transferring to the hospital every time I'm sick, where the family can feel a sense of failure because we're not doing the right thing for mum or dad. Case conference, which we'll be talking about in a little while, is where that sort of level is where you've got someone who has, a life, limiting illness, and they're being deemed to require palliative care, and you actually need to look at more complex medical issues. It's about preemptive prescribing, what needs to be put in place, where everyone's at, and it also varies, once again, all these depending on whether the resident has capacity or doesn't, as to the level of involvement, exactly. So we'll cover that in a little while. Okay, so we've got the palliative care case conference section. So palliative care case conference is very beneficial if you have a resident who has, a prognosis of 6 months or less, or trajectory B, which we'll cover in the next slide. Okay, so they're people that we know who have a life-limiting illness, and they've actually got, very limited time. So we, it's not exact science, but we believe that someone may have 6 months or less. That it's actually really even more important to have things in place and have a plan in place, because you know that death is actually going to come. And so it's about looking ahead and planning ahead and getting everything in place, both clinical, psychological, etc. So it's even more important. And so it's really important about I've been believed to be proactive rather than reactive, and it gives each of us as individuals, if you're facing that situation, as residents and carers and the family, peace of mind. And that's great if you can actually achieve that, where people can actually, peace of mind I think is quite important if you can achieve that, because basically it's actually setting something in place. Now, things may never go perfectly, because Murphy's Law is that some things unexpectedly can happen, but at least we've made a start, and we've actually got things in place, and also being flexible that we can change that plan down the track if things happen, and we can actually meet and we can reevaluate where we're at. We don't have to be, set in stone that this will happen. We have to, be a little bit flexible, because we don't know what life can hold for each of us. So the trajectory B people is basically those people who have 6 months or less. So that's actually, in this situation, it's actually even more important to have that sort of conversation. Okay, and also just bearing in mind with ACFI, if you've got someone who has been written the notes and the GP has classified them as palliative, and there's funding available. But just also bearing in mind that it's important to be very, to actually go back to the facility or to check in case it's actually what you can, is totally applicable in case, there's any problems around that. But generally speaking, you can get money to support them. Who should be at the case conference? So you really need a driver, firstly, someone who either has a palliative care background or a senior person of the team to actually drive and coordinate and actually can see the bigger picture, who may also, is quite good at getting everyone together and facilitating that process. But also, it's really important, I believe, to have someone in that group who knows the resident really well. And it doesn't just have to be a registered nurse or enrolled nurse, it can, or a carer. It can be anyone in that organisation, a social worker, someone who knows that person really well, who firstly can make that resident feel comfortable, family feel comfortable because they know that person, they've been there for a while, but also they actually know what's going on. They know what's going on a daily basis. They know what the problems are. The fact that they are having problems brushing their teeth because Parkinson's is bad. They are having problems getting out of bed without assistance. Now they occasionally need to be hoisted in the mornings. Some days not. Some days they might now need 2 people to help shower them rather than 1. All those sorts of things. Once again, we've had that conversation. If someone's got capacity, they need to be there because they're part of this process, they can, you know, talk about what it is they want. If they don't have capacity, it may not be appropriate for that person to be there. If they've got advanced dementia and they're not even sure where they are, you know, or who they are, then it's not really going to, maybe actually be more distressing for them to actually be at the meeting, and will probably disturb the meeting. So you're probably best to have other people, or the family, or of the team together, rather than them being there. It's also important that you've got someone who can actually make the decisions. So it could be their enduring guardian, if possible, guardian, or family members, you know, who actually can make decisions, so they can be part of this process and make it smoother running down the track, rather than having no one there who can actually make a decision, or, you know, about what needs. What family members are being there, you know, they may not want everyone there. If the person has capacity, ask them who they want. They may only want a couple of people, or they actually may prefer their grandson rather than their child to be there because they've got this special relationship. You know, there could be extended family or friends they prefer to be there than their own family, for example. Because, you know, as I said before, people can have second marriages and things can get quite confusing. Who in the aged care team else can be there? So do you want the GP, do they need to be there, this conversation, link nurses and carer? Location. You know, a nice room, whether or not you have flowers in the middle. You don't want a cluttered, dirty room. You want preferably a nice light room, somewhere private where they feel safe. It's making sure you have the right clinical information. Family questionnaire. Now that is very useful if you can give a family questionnaire, a sheet to the family prior to the case conference, where they can write down their concerns or questions and things that are worrying them, or they believe is an issue. We often found that not all family completed the questionnaires before they came, but at least what we found was that they had started thinking a process. So when they came, they're actually already halfway there. Staff communication sheet. Now, thinking, you know, in a busy facility, you can have quite a lot of staff who, may, you know, some residents could be quite popular, or quite, you know, require a lot of care, and have actually, you know, have got to know a lot of the staff. So might be a lot of staff that want to be part of this. But, you know, you can't have everyone there because it almost becomes like a floor show, you know. And if you want people to open up and talk about things, you need to be sort of a bit more close and personal. So opportunity then is all the staff can write down in advance all their concerns and questions, so you can hand it around the facility. Introducing everyone, so everyone knows who everyone is. They may not have even met the GP, because, you know, GPs often come at a set time. Some family members may have not even met the GP. They may have heard about them, they may not have met them, so it could be a surprise. Oh, that's the GP. They look a bit young. Reviewing the meeting goals and clarifying specific decisions. So, you know, what are the goals for this meeting? What do we want to achieve by the end of it? It's a bit like the learning objectives we had in advance, you know, here. What do we want to come out of this meeting? What do we want to achieve? What do they want to achieve? What does a resident want? What does a family want? Is there divergence amongst those things? Are we all, you know, can we get everyone all on the same page? It's important to have some ground rules. It's a bit like you lovely people in here. You know, if we didn't have ground rules, for example, people might just go off outside where they want, you know, go on their mobile phone. You know, there's certain social etiquette that we need to be in place, but it's also in that situation, saying, look, some ground rules, saying, you know, everyone has a right to speak, listen to what they say. If you disagree with it, you can challenge that in a respectful manner. Who is the legal decision maker? You know, that's important that we know who that is, so we can identify that. And so it's important. It's a bit like having, often with projects, you actually need someone who can actually move the project forward. In this situation, you actually need someone there who's actually going to have the power to make decisions down the track. Otherwise, you can talk whatever you want, but if you've got no one there who has influence and to make those decisions, and it can make it a little bit harder. What does the family and resident understand about the situation? You know, why are we here? You know, what's happening? Do they understand the medical condition? You know, not everyone is medically orientated. Not everyone has come across, you know, cancer or, you know, dementia, you know? I mean, and suddenly they're faced with a loved one who's got dementia, maybe dementia and cancer, dementia, cancer and COPD. I mean, that would be bad luck. But, you know, people have, as we get older, we accumulate ill health. It's a reality. You know, as you live longer, you accumulate things. So, you know, it's understanding what's happening and what's happening for them and what to expect. What's been happening for them over the last 6 months? You know, it's a bit before. You know, I've noticed Mum's not eating well. She's not, you know, my mum, you know, it's like me, I've got a huge appetite. It'd be like suddenly me not eating, you'd be thinking, oh, there's something's wrong there. You know, like, why isn't he eating? You know, why are they suddenly not interested in their Sudoku? Or why are they not knitting? They're always knit, you know, or they're always watching their Days of Our Lives. I'm not sure if that still exists, but, you know, Bold and Beautiful maybe. You know, they're not, you know, it's like they're not watching it. The fact that someone's missed out the fact that, you know, their vision's going, or they're just not as interested because they're breathless. It takes so long to get to the television set. By the time they're there, they go, oh, it's just too hard. I just want to go back to bed. You know, what's been happening? Where are they going? What do people understand about palliative care? So, you know, we're starting to talk about death, and we're starting to talk about their, you know, got a life-limiting illness. What do they understand about palliative care? Do they understand the palliative approach? They understand what we can do for them in a facility to make life easier for them. You know, a lot of people think, you know, palliative care is when you basically, you know, just think of the last days where basically, and someone is just about to die, and they may have different images related to media, and you know, as I talked about before, you think about your belief system. Your belief system is built on what you've experienced throughout your life. So if you've had a very negative experiences throughout life, you may have a very negative expectation about palliative care. If you've had a very positive experiences, and you'll have a very positive. So it's about challenging those belief systems and how we can actually reinforce a positive image for palliative care. Allow everyone to have their say, taking into account the preferences of the resident and family. If the resident has capacity, you know, the resident has, you know, certain preferences, the family have something else. You know, the family might be, you know, I'm not doing the right thing unless I've sent Mum to hospital, she's had an IV line in, she's had a peg tube in, she's been fed, even though, you know, and she's had every X-ray possible, every test possible. I've failed my mum unless I've done that, because that's what I think is expected of them as a child or carer. Whereas the family, the resident, actually, I just want them to be here. I just want you to hold my hand. I don't want you to fuss. All I want is you to be there. Ask them about questions they have about prognosis. I went to a lecture recently, and there's a professor over east, and he did some research about what do GPs or medical practitioners think about determining how long someone's going to live, and also what information the family want, and then did the same with the family and patients. And what they came out is that a lot of medical practitioners aren't very good at being very clear about exactly how long people have got. You know, often people live longer. They might, and also they basically believe that, or they think all the patient wants is a very clinical picture. You know, you're going to have pain, and you've got this, and you've got these symptoms, but not about the sort of psychosocial stuff. Whereas a lot of the residents, they don't just want to know, I've got 6 months. They want to know, a lot of people basically want to know, okay, what's the minimum I might live? What's the maximum I might live? What's the median of what's possible? And what will I experience in that journey? You know, what will I feel? What symptoms will I have? How can I manage that? What will that look like? You know, if you suddenly said you've got pancreatic cancer and you've got 6 months to live, you might be thinking, okay, well, is that the maximum, is that the minimum? But also, what am I going to experience that time? More importantly, is what we're all worried about. We're all worried about our quality of life. We want to know if we're going to suffer. How can we, are we going to have a painful death, and how can that be managed? All those sorts of things. Ask the resident what decisions are they considering. You know, are they considering just to be more conservative, or do they want to be more active, or they might want certain things for a certain period of time? Like I said before, they might want to try antibiotics for a certain period of time, or they might just want it if it keeps them comfortable, but not to prolong their life. You know, asking everyone, you know, in family, everyone, do they have questions so they can try and resolve that in the situation, and how can they support the resident, how can we support the resident, how we can work together, more importantly. If the resident is incompetent and doesn't have capacity, and you've got family members, it really boils down to what would they want if they could talk right now. So they may have lots of concerns. They might want to wait till their grandson comes or a certain person comes, or they actually then may say, okay, thank you staff very much, we just want as a family be together, you know, just have family time and talk about it. And then you may say, okay, we will schedule that for another time, or we'll come back if you want us to. You know, if you that's enough information today, do you want to resume again next week, or later in the week when they had time to think about and talk about it as a family? What happens if there is no consensus? Now, sometimes not everyone's going to be harmonious and everything can be resolved. Sometimes it might be, as I said before, it might be a matter of rescheduling our time, letting them have some time to mull things over, consider things, get some information, or they actually you may want to give them some more information or resources that they can use, read it and come back. Or you could try, what would the resident say if they were here, if they could speak right now and about what they'd like or what not. It's often a good foundation. Or identify the fact they may need, or you may need more specialist input. You may need PASN to come in and actually give them some more specific clinical input about that illness. For example, if it's pancreatic cancer, you may not clinically have a strong background in that illness. You may have, be an expert in other areas, but you actually may have reached your limit in giving them feedback and, information. So therefore, it may be worthwhile getting someone a bit more of a specialist to come in and provide a bit more information. They may require pastoral care because they may have concerns whether, for example, pastoral care or palliative care is in conflict with their religious beliefs. So they actually may need to have someone like that to come and talk to them and then reconvene. And sometimes it can just be very difficult, and you might have to sometimes agree to disagree and try and do the best job, and it can be hard. But sometimes I think if you can just, if it's really difficult, maybe just say, okay, that's enough for today. We'll actually give some space and we can try and reconvene later. And obviously, and just let them know that sometimes the decisions they make now has impact on other people outside the family. And they might, some people have larger families, and that can impact on them. Certainly, the way, if you're talking about a belief system, if you're thinking of like, what can happen, the ripple effect of what you're doing now on the grandchildren exactly and the family who come to see them, that can have an impact on their belief system. So what happens now, it always has a ripple effect to everything we do. So what actually can actually have effect on other people and have effect on other staff as well, for that matter. So once you've had the meeting, it's important that you summarise. Maybe the key person can re-verbalise to everyone what we've talked about and make sure that that's exactly what's actually happened, especially when they're writing notes. For example, what I hear, what you hear, it can be quite different. So maybe sort of summarising to make sure I've got the key things right and everyone's happy with that, and then writing that down and summarising it. Also including any disagreements or decisions that have been made. If you haven't already reviewed the family sheet or the staff questionnaire sheet, it's important to consider that now, but hopefully you would have done that more upstream from this situation. Identify who's going to be the key contact person, because it'd be quite helpful if you have maybe a person that you contact and then they can actually liaise with the rest of the family, especially if you've got a really large family, extended family. Maybe it might be one person who actually is very good at organising everyone else. And they will get them all together, or they'll let everyone know. Documenting key issues and plans. There's an old saying, if it's not written down, it never happened. Same thing with the nursing notes. If you don't write it down, it never happened. Okay, so it's important that everything's documented. Offer a conference summary to the resident and or family, because they actually may be very helpful for them to have a summary, so when they next come to the next meeting they can reflect as well, like we can, on what was said, what was discussed, so try and help us to be all on the same page. Provide a copy of the summary to the GP, so it goes in their notes as well, so you know, if they were there, they should have a summary of it, because they're probably not going to be taking notes. But particularly if they're not there, it can be very helpful. Like I said before, in our project, one of the GPs, we gave them the summary, and that summary was said, okay, for example, we might have, you know, we feel that this certain medication would have been really good for preemptively prescribed, and then he can consider that, and he would say, yes, I you know, that's fine. Or he might say, actually, no, I disagree with that, this other one, new drug is actually better. So it's a little bit about, you know, making sure they're on the picture as well. And that way you're also likely to get them on board down the track. Any other follow-up, you know, any other meetings might be required. So, you know, having a plan, do we need to meet again, or do we need to review it in a certain time? Most importantly is you document the care plans. So not only is it going in their notes, but it's going in their care plans, because if you don't follow through things downstream, then you can sit there and talk to your heart's content, but unless actions speak louder than words, so unless action changes, then nothing's going to happen. So if you then haven't, as a result, you know, amended the care they require, or, you know, looked at the medications they may need and things like that to make, make the palliative care more meaningful, then nothing will happen. So it's almost no point having the meeting. And basically make sure the GP is aware, and I think I've already reinforced that. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.